All right, we're going to get started. I'm Denise Burns from the Office of Career Strategy. Thank you all for coming to our Careers in Advertising and Public Relations panel, and I want to especially thank our panelists who came out in the rain to share their experiences with us. The format for today is first we're going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then I have some pre-selected questions that I'm going to ask, and then we'll open it up to the audience for any questions that you have. Now, one of our panelists, Karen, she's going to arrive at about 4:30. She got delayed. All right, so we'll start with the first. Saga, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Hi. Thank you all for coming out in the rain. It's awful out there. My name is Saga Blane, and I'm with WPP, which is a big parent holding company. It's like a giant Pac-Man. It just eats other companies, including a few at this table, actually. But they have a scheme called the WPP Fellowship, where you go every year for 3 years to a different company within their network. And so I am now in my third year at Refinery 29, which is an online content publisher and digital media company. And many people don't even know that that's part of the network, but it is. And yeah, so I'm sort of going to be talking about both roles, both my fellow WPP hat and my refinery hat, which is only a month. I've only been there for a month, so it's pretty fresh.
Cool. My name is Samantha Bruno. I'm from Peppercomm, which is a strategic communication and marketing firm. We're headquartered in New York, but we have offices in San Francisco and in London as well. I'm a senior account executive. I work primarily on the consumer and B2B tracks. And then I also am one of 2 intern coordinators at the agency.
My name's Carly. I'm also from Peppercomm. I'm an associate there. I work across multiple sectors. I work on the financial, consumer, and B2B side, and I offer account support throughout all of those.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm with Gray, which is a WPP company, which you alluded to. My perspective is going to be a little bit different because I'm with Human Resources. I'm a recruiter with Gray, so I could talk a little bit more about the recruitment process, entry-level positions, how you would land a position at an agency. We are a global agency that has both advertising as well as PR, so I could speak to both sides of that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you all. So for the first question, we'd like to hear how your past experiences led you to your current position. So again, if you wouldn't mind.
Is it always going to be me first?
No, we can mix it up.
We can mix it up.
Anyone who'd like to start?
Yeah, you want? Go ahead. You can start.
Mine will be a little bit different because I'm not account side, but as most recruiters do, you kind of fall into recruitment. So if anyone is unsure about what they want to do post-graduation, maybe I could be a little reassurance that it's going to be okay. I didn't know until what I wanted to do after graduation until a few weeks before. I was a psychology major at a liberal arts school, so it was very broad. I went to my career center the first 2 weeks before graduation, and the person who was counseling me actually told me about human resources, and I was like, oh, I'll take a stab at it. And I really literally fell into recruitment at Edelman, which is a PR firm, and that's how I started my career.
Yeah, when I was going to school, it was the height of Gilmore Girls, which is all coming back in just a few weeks, but I swore I was going to be a journalist. I just thought I was going to be Rory Gilmore until I had some experience writing for the newspaper, and I thought, I can't do this forever, there's no shot. But I knew that there were aspects of journalism and writing and communication that I really liked, and so I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick for school. I took a lot of PR classes and just fell in love with it. And I noticed that a lot of the extracurriculars that I was doing on campus lended itself well to that side of things. I did a lot of new student orientations, and I always felt myself drawn to working with the parents, actually. But you did a lot of selling the university, being the public face. And so once I kind of got that coupled with some of the PR classes, I just knew that it was going to be something that combined the hard skills of writing and using the communication side, but also just people skills as well. So that's kind of how I fell into it.
I fell into it pretty similarly. I was a journalism major at first when I was going to school, and I realized after about 6 months that it wasn't my forte. Not that journalism's great, we need journalism. We work very closely with journalism and PR, but it didn't have the people interaction that I was looking for in my career, and it didn't. I figured out that I could channel those writing skills that I picked up from my passion for journalism and sort of put them into a career that went all across the spectrum. So, I could write, I could communicate, I could, all those hard skills that I wanted to use. I kind of combined them with writing and ended up in PR.
I actually did not even know what advertising was when I applied for my program, beyond having watched Mad Men. And my parents met through human rights. They're very social justice, the whole idea of the commercial world is a foreign beast to them. And I got here because, I studied art history as an undergrad at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and then I was here at Yale for my master's degree in the School of Architecture. I did a sort of architectural theory degree, and I would say that is the thing that I fell into because I did not know what to do when I graduated. I had that year of babysitting, hostessing, traveling, crisis time. And I was I guess I'll just do a master's degree because I know how to do that. And my advice to you is don't do that. Don't do something just because it's the safe thing and the thing that you know how to do. And I got here and realized very quickly that basically my career prospects would be PhD in architectural theory, no thank you. Business development in an architecture firm, no thank you. And actually that the whole industry of architecture is just does not suit me as a person, which we can go into why individually, but and I just kind of actually had not a very good experience, and I stuck it out, and I did my degree, and then I finished it, and my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, we met here and we moved to Minnesota. And so this was my second time post-graduation that I had a total crisis. Only this time I was in Minnesota during the polar vortex, which is minus 20 degrees. It was awful. I had no friends, I had no job, and I was just applying to things, just sending out resumes, getting nothing. It was awful. It was awful. And that is when I discovered the WPP fellowship. And for me, the reason that I got here is because I had to have that moment of being okay, hold on, who am I? What do I want? What do I like? If I don't know what career, what kind of people do I want to be surrounded by? What kind of environment? What kind of industry? I wanted something forward-facing, not backward-looking, and I wanted something that was both creative and entrepreneurial. And then I just started talking to people and being this is kind of what I want. And some people were I don't know, maybe you should try advertising. And then I found it. So for me, the lesson is know yourself first, and then then go after it, go get what you want. But yeah.
Great, and I think some of you touched a bit on this next question, but I'll still ask it. What personality traits do you feel are necessary to be successful in the role and in your industries? Anyone?
No one wants to go first.
I can go first.
Yeah.
I find that you have to kind of find a level of comfortability with yourself in order to you're expected, depending on where you work. So for Peppercomm, we're not siloed into one specific practice area. So I'm expected to be an expert in hospitalities. I work a lot with restaurants, but then also a chemical company. So that can be difficult. That some of that is very outside of my comfort zone and just what comes naturally to me. But it's very easy to put that maybe lower on the list of priorities because I prefer to work with a different client or whatnot. So in order to really present the client effectively to reporters, to different audiences externally, you kind of have to find that within yourself, that you know what you're talking about, even if it's not something that you would be chatting with your friend about on a normal everyday basis. And then this might go back more towards being at Peppercomm, but you mentioned it a little too. Our agency is very entrepreneurial, so it's very what you make of it. You can go into your career and do exactly what's asked of you, and you'll probably do okay, but you probably won't stand out the way you will if you really take that moment to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you want to go after, and take the necessary steps to get there. It's an industry that I think requires some tenacity and persistence. I think we're based on getting a no from a reporter and figuring out a new way to spin it, a new angle to show. I don't necessarily work on the advertising side, but a little bit the same thing. I mean, if you get a no, it's not enough to just say, oh, we tried, and move on to the next thing. You kind of have to figure out a new way to present that same idea.
Yeah, definitely echoing everything you said. Specifically to account management, which is more advertising, you have to be a problem solver. I think that's the biggest personality trait. It's very much a people industry. So within account management, you're the client-facing role, but you're also the role that works with all the different departments. So you wear a lot of different hats. You don't speak to a client the same way you speak to a creative. Creatives don't really like meetings, and they don't really like time schedules, and they don't like anything before 10. Maybe after 7, and you don't do that with your client. So it's just being a people person and knowing how different people communicate and what's the most effective way to do so. So it's kind of hard, like what skill or what personality trait makes you successful in that type of role. Self-awareness is definitely really important. That's not an industry that's right for everyone, but also I guess problem solving, communication skills, those are the forefront of all the successful people at Gray when I think of them. And definitely thinking like 5 steps ahead is really important.
Yeah. I think it's important to, obviously you want to do great work and you want to put your best work forward, but don't stress on being too much of a perfectionist. I think, echoing what Sam said, this is an industry where you kind of have your hands in different fields. So, I could go from a restaurant brand that I work on to I work with an investment firm, which isn't my background. I don't have a background in financial. So learning that, you can't be hard on yourself because there are going to be things that you don't understand immediately. There might be something that you mess up, and that's okay. So just not harboring on the specifics and the nitty-gritty and allowing yourself to learn is really important. Almost being like the anti-perfectionist a little bit, because I know I can go down that rabbit hole, but it's important to know that you're not always going to know the answer.
And this is from my sort of WPP fellow hat. I think one of the cool things is that I've gotten to see a lot of different facets of the industry, and even at this table, like all of us do completely different things. Mm-hmm. We have different skill sets that we use in our jobs. Mm-hmm. And so I think that what's cool about this industry is that there is kind of something for everyone if you know who you are, and there's like an insights portion of the business which is very academic, very thinky, or else very data driven. There's the people side of the business, which is all about like developing relationships and being able to walk a client through a project, mm-hmm. or being a very good manager, or being very creative, so it's kind of like whatever fits you naturally. I would say there is a role for that, but underlying all of it, like you guys said, you have to be interested in people, in the world and where it's going, and in kind of, you have to be a little bit hungry, mm-hmm. and it can get very fast paced. So I think having a sense of why you're there and what you're doing will help ground you.
Great, thank you. What about the aspects of your roles that you find to be the most rewarding and also the most challenging?
I can go first.
This is a tough one.
Biggest challenge for me, it's also my favorite part about working at an agency, but it's equally sometimes the most challenging, is how many hats I have to wear and how many projects are happening at once. So at Peppercomm, if we're having a good staffing moment, I can be on anywhere from 5 to 7 account teams at a time. Most of the time it's closer to 7. And we sit on intern committee, so that's basically an extra added account to itself. So I have to be shifting sides of the brain, and I'm working with very different groups of people throughout the day, different client expectations, different manager expectations, and different working styles. I have some managers who see something as a strength in terms of how you might communicate or how you're working, and then another manager might say to me, oh, you know what, I'd prefer if you did it a completely different way. So sometimes just trying to find your footing just from day to day of trying to make sure from a time management perspective, prioritizing and also meeting all those different individual expectations or managing those expectations can be a challenge. I also find that to be what keeps it exciting for me. And I think the biggest reward is when a client allows us to come in from the PR side and kind of have a seat at the table with them from the very beginning of a project, because then we can really see how our work is affecting sales or awareness or some, as opposed to just coming in last minute to problem solve and quick fix. Or we do a lot of work with crisis. So coming in the beginning of a crisis and really seeing how we're able to kind of move the needle and affect the business is one of the more rewarding sides for me.
My answer again is going to be different, just because I'm not on the account side, but in terms of rewarding experiences, I always think of my job as a rewarding experience. I mainly focus with entry level, college graduates, so helping them find that advertising is their career passion is so rewarding. But also our people at Gray shape the culture, so deciding who are the people who are going to walk through the door and start their career with us is very, I think, like a great aspect of the job, but also very fun, and it also kind of lends to the challenges. Since there are so many different avenues that you could go within advertising, whether it's creative, account management, planning, strategy, analytics, PR, there's so many. I think a challenge is getting people to be self-aware and finding that avenue that's best for them. So that'll go, I guess, into like my tips and advice for people who want to pursue this type of career, but I'll talk about that later. But yeah, again, rewarding the people, the culture, and helping people find their careers at Gray.
I think something that surprised me as a challenge when I started was that a lot of times you don't always see eye to eye with the clients that you're working with, and a lot of times you sort of have to teach them why you're going about things a certain way. They might think that they have the coolest new product and they should be on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, and oftentimes we have to backtrack and explain, well, the Wall Street Journal would never cover this. So a lot of one of the biggest challenges I'm learning about is how do you find that path that we can both go down to, because it's our job to work with our clients and consult them. So how do you get them to see where you're coming from and get them to understand how the public views their product, what their audiences need. So that kind of leads into the most rewarding part, is when that does happen and they, the light bulb goes off, or, you are presented with this challenging project that the client has very high expectations, and in reality it's going to be very challenging to meet, but when you do meet it, when you land that awesome story for your client, it's very rewarding to see your work.
Yeah, I think I struggled a little bit with this question, because for me, the challenge and the reward can kind of be the same thing. Like some of the most rewarding experiences are when you just face the challenge and break through. And I've had both the kind of challenges that are sort of environmental, like, I don't know, everybody's really stressed out, or like I have a bad boss or whatever, and that's a kind of like, I think everybody, no matter the industry, can have those kind of challenges. And then my most recent challenge, because I'm new, which is a challenge every time to be new, and I feel like, okay, how do I get a sense of this place, these people, this culture? How do I gain their trust? How do they, learn to trust me? And it always kind of feels like you're just sort of hurtling into the dark really, really fast. And that is terrifying, but also now having done this twice, and this is my third time, I had that confidence that's like, okay, there's something good at the end of this if I just sort of stick it out. But I think one thing that I have learned a lot in different capacities, and actually that I probably learned best here at Yale, is how challenging it can be to just be in modern day working culture, which is emails all the time and people working till midnight, and this expectation, especially if you're kind of a type A person, that you have to give more and more and more and more, and that enough is never enough. And maybe it's also just a young woman thing, but I feel I've really struggled with the boundaries of my energy, of how much I give and how much I don't give. And a big learning curve for me has been exactly what you were saying before about the perfectionist stuff, is being like, you know what, it's okay that there's sometimes you just need to like get something in on time, or sometimes it's better for you to not care about something, or go out and take a walk around the block, or like find time
The
for
walks are
yourself.
key.
The walks are key,
The
and
walks around the block are key.
yeah, and finding these like little ways to take care of yourself, I think, is becoming more and more pressing in our industry, and I'm seeing people like on all levels who are just feeling like just overwhelmed and drowning. So that is like the number one thing I would say.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm allowed to piggyback off of her question before I move on to another question. But I found that's interesting that you mentioned the whole, it can be overwhelming coming into the industry from college. From that expectation of like, do I need to put in work? Do I need to answer emails at 11 o'clock at night when they come in? Some people do, some people don't. Where do I fall? And I found that depending on the firm, so take this with a grain of salt, but some of it you train people to treat you in certain ways. So I found that when I first came into the industry, I was like, oh my God, it's 11:30 and I'm getting this email, and everything felt so urgent and I had to respond. And then I realized that then when I didn't respond, that person would be like, well, she doesn't care, she didn't respond. And I'm like, but no one else is. So if you train people to expect you to respond at midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning. We have a coworker who I swear actually never sleeps. I don't understand how she does it, but that's not what I want. I don't want to be answering emails at 3 o'clock in the morning, and none of my team members expect me to do that because I haven't done that to date. So I mean that comes with judgment calls too. I'm not saying there's never a crisis or never a time when you need to work like that. But sometimes that lends itself to kind of how you train people to treat you in the workplace, for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good segue into our next question, which is, what advice do you have for students who are interested in getting into these careers?
I think research is key. What you're probably hearing a lot is there's so many different avenues. So if you hear Gray and you want to apply to Gray, that's great. That's a good place to start. But then do you want to do shopper marketing? Do you want to be a planner? Do you want to do PR? Do you want to do account management? And then take it another step further and find out what the entry-level positions are and what the responsibilities are. One big piece of advice I always give recent graduates is to take or to print out the job description and then take your resume and highlight the keywords, like the buzzwords from the job description, the buzzwords from your resume, and line them up. Do you have the core skills that are necessary to be successful in the role? If you're not seeing that type of work on your resume, if you're a junior or a sophomore, maybe get the skills that you need if you want to pursue that avenue, or look at other options. We're integrated. We have other avenues, like we've mentioned. So definitely doing your research on the agency is important. WPP is a huge, huge network, and it always kills me when I ask people what their favorite campaign is, and they say Maybelline and we rep CoverGirl. I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah. Know your research, know the brands, super important. So I think those would be two of my biggest pieces.
Yeah, I think the research is key. I mean, there's never anything more frustrating than when we have a really solid candidate that we bring in and we ask them why Peppercomm, and they'll respond with something that talks about peppercorn and why they're interested in working at peppercorn, and I'm like, no. All you have to do is look at the web. I mean, that's like so basic. And I think deep down, and I'll speak for myself, but we all know you're applying to multiple places. I mean, there's never a fantasy that you're only applying to Peppercomm, but certainly knowing what Peppercomm has to offer versus some of these, we don't do hardcore advertising, so sometimes we'll have people come in who are really looking for that, and at the end of the interview I'm like, well, not sure what you thought you were gonna find here. So I think that's key. I think the other big thing is networking. It feels like a big industry until you get in it, and then you realize how much of it is connected. How many resumes are passed to us through our CEO because somebody he met 15 years ago now lives next to his neighbor who now passed along to him, and we always interview referrals. Whether we think your resume is a fit or not, it's a favor to someone at the agency, so we do that. And so sometimes that seems unfair, but if it can work to your advantage, I just highly recommend. You never know who you're meeting, and so presenting yourself in a professional setting as much as you can, and then finally burning no bridges because you know that the industry is so small. Just really making sure that you kind of keep those relationships as best as you can, I think is really important.
But please don't send a LinkedIn message to every executive at the agency.
Agreed.
Because they forward them all to me. And then I'm like, who is this person who's literally reaching out to every
Yes.
C-suite executive in the agency? But definitely going back to that, networking is key. I found out about Edelman through a connection that I met at a career fair. I found out about Gray through a friend of a friend who was a creative at another agency. So definitely making those connections, doing LinkedIn searches is the way to go for sure.
Interesting. I feel like maybe I was one of the people who sent a LinkedIn message to executives, and I'm like, oh no, I need to change my answer. Maybe I'll try and
Just
dig
tasteful.
myself out. Yeah, I think, I already told you all that I was like flinging resumes at, like everywhere basically, and I think for me it comes down to having a very clear intention of what you want and why you want something, and the person at the other end can always tell. If you're saying peppercorn, you clearly don't want to be there. Like you have no actual interest in being part of that company. You don't know anything about it. So you're not going to have a good time being there either. You're not going to have a good experience. So it's also about like you having to create the life that you want for yourself, and people always react, positively when you say, hey, I saw that you wrote this article and let's talk about this point because I'm really interested in it. And I know that you worked here before, and, I was really interested in that campaign that you did, whatever, But when you have an intention, when you have genuine interest, you can't help but show your interest. And that's the thing that like gets you hired. But in terms of the LinkedIn messages thing, I do think my experience with HR, no offense, was always a wall. Like, it was like I could write many, many brilliant cover letters and whatever, and it would go nowhere, and I couldn't understand why that was. And so for me, I felt like I had to like go around and kind of scrappy. So for me, it was like, okay, well, who are people in the industry that I really respect, that I admire? So I found like this guy, Ray Inamoto, who is at AKQA, and I read one of his pieces, and I was like, this is amazing. I love what this guy is saying. I have to meet with him. And so I basically just did ray.inamoto@akqa.com, and I said, can we meet for a coffee? I loved your piece. I'm thinking about the industry. Like, I can come to you. And I think all those things, like, not like, can you give me a job? Because he doesn't know who you are. He doesn't care. He's a busy man. But, like, I'm a young, curious person, and something you said really resonated with me. Like, I will come to you, make it no effort on your part. I will buy you your coffee. You don't even have to pay. Most of the time they end up paying, actually. But like, and it took me, his assistant canceled like 6 times, but finally I got down and like had a coffee with this man, and I wasn't trying to sell myself and be like, look at how amazing I am, here's my resume, like in verbal form. I was just like, let's talk about this stuff, let's really get into it. And we just had this amazing sort of sparky conversation, and that was before I got onto the fellowship. But like, if I hadn't gotten on, I would have, followed up on that lead or said, who else should I talk to? Who else do you think? And you sort of, you can go through organically. But that is probably different than just like LinkedIn messages at everyone.
I think I probably see the other perspective of people copy and pasting the same message, and then they all get forwarded to me. Sorry that you feel like we're a wall. I'm definitely not a wall.
No. I'm sure you are non-wall.
No, but I get that a lot. I think these industries are very competitive, especially entry level. The amount of applicants I get for an assistant account executive position is probably around 800 people per month. So if you could imagine the amount of LinkedIn messages I get, the amount of emails to my personal email, people finding me, sarah.hokanson@gray, I get that a lot too. But I think the biggest piece of your advice that is key is finding a common interest with these people. They're executives, they have busy schedules, they're managing a bunch of things. But if you did genuinely like an article they wrote, that'll probably stand out to them, and that's awesome. I'm glad that worked for you.
Thanks. Me too.
Yeah, I think you have to be okay with taking risks. And that's everything from finding a piece from an executive that you have zero connection to and being okay with reaching out. And then going back to the research piece, looking into specifically where you're looking to apply. Like at Peppercomm, our job description online, and if you follow our entry-level intern, focused blog, we're very open to anything creative when it comes to your application. So, for example, and I'm just going to throw Carly out there, when Carly applied for the internship, she wrote a BuzzFeed article that was like 10 reasons why Peppercomm, why Carly is the next Peppercomm intern. And it seems so superficial, but she had really dug into the research. I mean, everything from I also love eating desserts because everything at Peppercomm has to do with food or drinks, to some of the more I have these incredible research capabilities. And she had put pictures to it and whatnot. And so that's one example. We've gotten plenty of creative ones. It's not going to get you the job, but to your point, we're receiving hundreds of applications per session, and every cover letter sometimes looks identical to each other. And so I'm just trying to think little things like we refer to everything has pepper in front of it based on our name. So we call our interns our pep squad. And so after we interviewed a candidate, she actually overnighted us a pair of pom-poms and said that she was really looking forward to joining pep squad. Again, it seems so silly, but we knew that she had done her research beyond just looking at the homepage of the website. Again, doesn't guarantee you're going to get a job, but it at least puts you out in front and kind of catches our eye.
Yeah, you have to remember it's a creative industry, so if you do something creative, that'll definitely catch their eye. I could tell you a number of stories of things I've gotten in the mail that are just wacky to smart.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, don't be discouraged from just applying online. I applied online to Edelman, which is the world's largest PR firm, and I got a job without knowing anyone, not reaching out to anyone on LinkedIn. Recruiters do go through every single application, no matter how long it takes. So don't be discouraged. We will find you if you're great, and your resume will do the talking for you. So don't feel like you have to do something crazy. If that's not your personality and you can't back that up, don't do that. Because you'll get to the interview and they'll be like, wow, that was crazy, outlandish email you sent, but you're just a person, and that's okay if we want you to be yourself too. So remember that.
And I think all of this can sound very overwhelming. I recently graduated, so you're applying to all these jobs. You have to write a BuzzFeed article about yourself. You have to make your cover letter into a press release. It feels like there's all these things to do, and it is very overwhelming to try and find that fit after you graduate. So I think it's important to set goals for yourself. To sort of narrow down where you want to be. I knew that I wanted to be at Peppercomm, so that's why I took the time to write a BuzzFeed article about myself, as embarrassing as it is to say out loud.
Hey,
got me in. But it's important to goal set and to understand that you're not going to be able to write a BuzzFeed article for every single job that you apply to, but just knowing what you want and creating a way to get there so you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have to fill out 100 job applications tomorrow and I have to get hired next week. Just don't let that bog you down.
Okay, I think we've gone through the bulk of our questions, and Karen, our final panelist, has arrived. So why don't we give her an opportunity to introduce herself and
Okay. Sorry I'm late. I was dealing with a crisis, which is part of my job at the Yale Office of Public Affairs and Communications. So I deal mainly with straight public relations. And I'm the Director of External Communications, so I have direct interactions with reporters. And I'm also Deputy Press Secretary. Some of you might have seen Tom Conroy's name in a lot of the Yale Daily News articles. So he's the official press secretary. And Erin OConnor is our VP of Communications. So we deal with reporter inquiries, and we also promote the university as well. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Great, thank you. So I'll ask one final question, then we'll open it up to the audience for your questions. What would you say are the first steps a student should take to get into your industry?
I would say the biggest thing, which will sound very discouraging, so you may have friends who are finance majors and they get jobs 6 months before they graduate. That's just not the case with this industry. I would say the biggest piece of advice would be, if you're sorry, I'll take a step back. This is for like agencies. They hire for immediate need hires. So either an account, someone will leave, someone will be promoted, they have to replace them, or it'll be a new business win, so based on business need. So that happens about at most a month to 2 weeks before. So sit tight, be patient. It may not happen until right before you graduate or right after. So that's in terms of the recruitment process. I would say be patient. Don't start applying in April because you won't hear back and you'll get discouraged. And then again, the research and networking piece is a really, really big first step.
I think in this industry specifically, a lot of times interning is the way to actually break into that full-time position, which can be challenging. You know, you have a degree and you don't necessarily want to, you know, take that internship. You prefer a full-time slot, but I think, you know, in this industry, don't think of it as beneath you, because most of these internships are super hands-on. You know, you're getting real working experience. At Peppercomm, our internship is, you're basically a temporary junior level associate, which is awesome. So I think, you know, being open to trying things that you don't necessarily want to after graduation is important, because I think in PR, you know, interning is definitely the way to get your foot in the door anywhere.
Yeah. I really liked the advice you had about printing out a job description for a place that you might be looking at. So if you think PR is for you, even if you find a generic one, printing that out and looking at it against your resume, just to give you an idea if you haven't had an experience yet on the interning side before looking to apply full-time, really being able to see if it's something that might lend itself well to your skill set. Secondly, I would say that when you are looking at your resume versus a potential job description, don't get discouraged if you haven't had the exact experience in PR or in advertising or in marketing. I find that a lot of people come to us, and if I ask a question about how retail experience, which I think is just one of the hardest, like working in retail, hospitality, people discount the skill sets that they build working in those jobs. And so I often ask in an interview, if you have that experience on your resume, what skill sets are transferable from one to the other? And that flusters people a lot of times, because in people's heads it's like, oh, well, it's just a hostess or it's just a waitress, but talking about how you can mitigate angry customers. So a lot about customer service, about working in a team setting, juggling a million things at once, problem solving. There's a lot of things that are transferable. So I would recommend really taking the time before you go into any sort of interview or even application process, where you can find what skill sets are usable in different industries.
That's really good. Yeah. Sorry, I'm still listening to you. So I have 2 books, which is like a very concrete thing that helped me. Not so much maybe, I feel like this is more like when you have your sights on the goal, this is what you do. But if you don't even like really know what the goal is, then I recommend, one is The Artist's Way, which is about tapping into your creativity basically, and it's like daily journaling exercises, and it's like everybody has a creative self in them, and this is a creative industry, and I think it just generally like helps you kind of get into the flow of who you are. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you guys have probably seen it, it's What Color Is Your Parachute, which is around. My mom got it for me when I was going through a time, and I actually really hated some of the exercises because I was like, don't put me in a box, you know, but then it was good because I was like, oh, right, I'm having this reaction because whatever, I don't want that kind of working environment, you know. So there are a lot of tools out there. Use them as tools, not as, you know, mantra. But and then the second thing I think is almost like, if you are interested in this industry, you can treat your own job hunt as a mini communications campaign, and you can think about like, who is your target audience? You know, if it's like you want to be a creative, okay, like who is that person? Learn everything about them. Think about how they're going to be receptive to your message. Learn to tell your story in an authentic way that's going to then land with that message. And then like distribution channels. Is it actually the resume, or is it the LinkedIn message, or is it the cold call? Like, what's the best way to kind of grab attention and make yourself stand out from your competition, which, you know, probably putting just a piece of paper amongst a lot of other pieces of papers, that's not going to give you any differentiation ultimately. So just like think about that.
So I think everything you guys said, plus I think informational interviews. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone who has a position that you'd like to have. And a lot of people are really, they'll make the time to talk to you. And, you know, a lot of people that came in for a recent job posting that we had reached out to our head of communications in our office, and she made the time to have coffee with them. So don't be shy, reach out to people who have the positions that you want and talk to them, try to get a sense of what that particular job entails, and you might find out that I don't want to do this. I kind of started out I was a pre-med major, but my bio class was an 8 a.m. class, like way across campus at UMass Amherst. And so that ended my but I was always a good writer. So I switched to journalism, but I still had that interest in medicine. So my foray into PR combined my interest in medicine as well. So I was a healthcare communications specialist at the medical school here at Yale years ago. And then I also did healthcare agencies. So use the interest that you have. If you're interested in fashion, you can do fashion PR. And use that as a launching point, because if you're just doing PR for a company that you really are not invested in, it could be quite miserable. But I think just making those connections with people is important, because then you could find out a lot about what your own motivations are for getting into the industry. And be a great writer. I think taking a journalism class, because ultimately your goal is to reach journalists, and although the journalism industry changed drastically since I was a journalist, having that background is vital to being a communications person. There are some people who call themselves communications people who don't have writing skills, and that can be a challenge. And then take advantage of the resources here at Yale. Our office hires interns all the time, so if you're interested in just coming in for a couple days and seeing what we do, please let me know. So you can see we deal with crisis communications, a broad range of dealing with issues that you've read about probably. So that offer's definitely open to you. So get a really good base in writing.
That's great. Are there questions that any of you have for any of the panelists? Yes.
Building on the books, do you have any industry publications that you would recommend reading to learn more sort of about the landscape?
The David Edelman book is like really, or Richard Edelman, written by David Edelman. I think it's called Edelman. I don't know if you guys have read it in PR, but it's really awesome, especially giving an overview of the industry and the landscape and how it's changed. They gave it to every employee when you started there, and I really, really liked it. I think it's called The Book of Edelman. But it's a big blue book. You can't miss it. And for PR, it's really, really helpful. For Gray, I don't know if there's one specific to advertising that's very good for industry landscaping. I'll have to get back to that. I can let you know.
Yeah, from like a publication standpoint, going a little off the book avenue, I love Adweek. Adweek is, I don't even work strictly on the advertising side, but I have an advertising technology company as a client, and I find that, I mean, everything is becoming so integrated between PR, advertising, and marketing at this point that I actually prefer it to PR news. So Ad Age, Adweek, any of those I think are really helpful, and they're very good at showing the changing landscape, and it's changing rapidly. New social channels, new print, pulling back on a lot of budget for print and whatnot. So those are two that I think are really good to keep an eye on, even online. And you can get like daily newsletters from them and whatnot that just pull out like main stories and whatnot.
And as far as like straight PR, Reagan's, RAGA, and I think there's some apostrophe S, and PR Week. They have student discounts if you want to go to some of their conferences. Conferences is also a good way of meeting, people at different companies and just making those contacts.
Jeremy Bullmore is like one of the grandfathers of advertising, and he has a series of short essays, which are just so human about what it really is, like what is a brand actually. And they're lovely, they're charming, they're easy. John Steele, who heads my program, has a book called The Perfect Pitch, which I think is really good regardless of what you're going into. It just teaches you how to pitch and sell your idea, which is something we all need. And then I have actually not read this book, but apparently How Brands Grow is like the thing that everybody's reading in branding. So, but don't take my word for it, because I haven't read it. So.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Samantha, you talked about working with managers with different styles. Can you elaborate on like what a different style might look like and how you adapt to it?
Sure. So I have some managers who are super in the weeds with, you know, they want to know every little thing. Sometimes you can call that micromanaging, which I don't love. I'm a very type A personality, and so like if it's on my to-do list, it is going to get done, and it's going to get done when you ask me to do it. And so sometimes I find for myself that I have to take a step back if I feel like a manager is in the middle of the process asking for all these updates. I'm like, oh, I could actually be working on it, and instead I have to be updating you about how it's going. And so that can be one extreme, and then I have other managers that are very, very hands-off, which if that works better for your working style, that can be great. If you're the kind of person that kind of needs that, like, hey, where are we on this? Let's make sure this doesn't fall off your radar. That can be dangerous. And I have managers that I need to sometimes manage up to them, make sure that things don't fall off their radar in terms of reviewing, approvals, hey, this is a priority, making sure that they understand where some of the priorities lie. So it really depends, but again, I have some managers that just, everyone has just a slightly different style. They prefer you just to give them a call if you have a question. And then I have some who are like, I'm always on the phone, please make sure you email or message me about something. So in the beginning, it could be a little overwhelming from an agency standpoint if you're working with multiple teams, because what one person loves, the other person's like, oh, Sam's walking in my office again, and I really wish she would just send me an email about this. So it's just kind of figuring out what everybody's working style is, which can be interesting in the beginning, but definitely is better in the long run, because once you understand how everyone works best, you don't run into too many miscommunications or, you know, things that start to build tension when you're working with teams. But it can be sometimes a little bit of a process to kind of figure all of that out.
Any other questions? Yes.
You guys mentioned that the landscape of advertising and marketing is changing. And I was curious as to within the advertising and marketing, like hiring culture, is that landscape also changing, or is there like a mold that you want someone to fit when you hire someone?
I think in the way the landscape is changing, I think something big is that we even offer PR within an advertising agency. So what you would find is a lot of advertising agencies used to outsource their PR work. So maybe they'll hire Peppercomm, like maybe Marriott is both of our clients, and they'll outsource Peppercomm to do our PR. But we wanted to make everything cost efficient for our clients and have it in-house. So in terms of the way it affected the agency structure and recruitment, it didn't really, because PR is still PR, and if I'm recruiting you for PR, you have to be a good writer. So if you're more on the account management side, maybe not so much writing or written communication, it's more verbal communication and project management skills. So it hasn't yet changed. It's not like PR people are being account managers and they have to wear two different hats in that sense. They are still pretty siloed. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, I think at Peppercomm, and we handle the hiring mostly for the interns as opposed to full-time, but our intern pool is what usually feeds the entry-level positions. We're seeing a slight shift in the merge between PR and marketing, more so than the creative side. That really we hire specifically for creative digital and then specifically for PR. And then we have an analytics division, so that's all separate, but we're getting more requests for interns who have had a little bit more of an integrated environment in the past, which is hard, and it's not necessarily it's not necessarily like required at this point, but I do find that now we're getting more of that, like, oh, have they also done paid social? Oh, have they also, so there's a little more than just like, have they spoken on the phone directly to a reporter, for example, or written a press release. And I think we're going to see the industry go a little bit more towards that as we progress, but I don't think it's changed so much right now, but I think that you might start to see everything kind of become a little bit more integrated.
I was going to say also in terms of like advice, if you want to get that integrated but you don't necessarily can find like an integrated agency for an internship, startups are a really good avenue to go down because they may have one intern for the full department. So if you're at a digital marketing startup, you may wear a lot of hats where you're doing PR, advertising, paid social, you may be a community manager one day. So I found that that's like a really, really great stepping stone, and they are a lot of times unpaid internships, but it's really great exposure and experience. So if you can find a startup, that's a really great avenue. And there may be a health startup if you're specifically interested in health PR. So that's a good way to go too.
Great, that's great advice. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you all for coming. I'm sure you found this to be very, very useful information, and we really thank our panelists, especially Karen, who came in from a crisis.
Yeah, if you guys have any specific questions about what I do, because I didn't have a chance to give you more info, please feel free. I have my cards up here, so take one.
And I thank you all for your candid responses and for really sharing your experiences and what it takes to really succeed in the industries.
And one last parting bit of advice is be flexible. It's not really a linear path to, account director or whatever title you're aspiring to. Try to be creative in the positions that you do take, because they all, combine to lead up to, what you're going to end up doing eventually. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know if